It's happening. It's no longer a crackpot theory. It's no longer just something that's relegated to sci-fi movies. The robots are going to take over. It's inevitable at this point. There are two things that are causing that to happen. We'll talk about those two things. But it's really important that because everything is being automated, that you do things that robots can't. So this is advice that I give my students all the time. I mean, I've based my entire trajectory of my career and the decisions that I make in my free time based on the fact that I am pretty sure that almost everything that we do as a society for work today is going to be done by robots. There was an old demotivator from despair.com that said, if a pretty picture and a trite phrase are all it takes to motivate you, you probably have a very easy job, one that robots will be doing soon. And 10 years ago when I saw that, I thought that was really funny. And now I look at stuff like that and I think, yeah, that's probably going to happen. Stuff like this is happening all the time. So there's two things that are causing this. One is that no matter what we do, we can't stop the scientists from trying to automate the crap out of everything. It's just going to happen. There is this drive to just automate, right, and progress, and that's great. And there's a lot of good things that happen from that. But at some point in time, there's not going to be much work left to do, and so that'll be an interesting society. But the other thing is that we are obsessed with worshiping at the altar of celebrity and ignorance. Well, ignorance is celebrated almost. Intelligence is something that is insulted. Egghead and nerd and whatever and all those type of things. Like, we insult the intelligent and we worship those that are just morons, just idiots. Anyway, that's kind of an interesting thing. But on top of that, if you look at what's happening in the media, not the media, sorry, if you look at what's happening in science, like all the time, they're doing interesting things. We cannot stop Japan from trying to come up with robots that are going to emote. We can't stop Silicon Valley from trying to come up with a bigger, better deep learning machine, an AI that can better track consumers and whatever. And it seems like every other month they're having to kill it because they built something that they don't understand. At one point in time, I can't remember if this is Facebook or Google or whatever, you had two different AI that they had built, and they started communicating with each other in a language that they invented. This is Google. I remember this. It was for Google Translate, right? Google Translate is notoriously hilarious when you try to translate different languages. And so they created this deep learning machine to try to figure out how to better translate something so it sounds like a native speaker was translating it. And what it did was it invented its own super language that none of the software engineers could understand what it was talking about. And then it began communicating with other AI. And so they killed it because they were like, well, we don't know what it's saying. And then again, that happened at Facebook where they're trying to track things and do whatever. And so they have one AI and another AI that are sending messages back and forth to each other in a language that nobody can understand. They don't know what they're talking about, right? I mean, we keep having to shut these things down because we're going to create Skynet or the Matrix or something, right? Now, before that, though, and I don't know if this is going to happen 2 years in the future or 150 years in the future, but go read Time Machine. The science is a little wonky, but the really interesting thing about it is you have Morlocks, which are not the sewage people in the X-Men. It's actually a society of underground dwelling people, and then I can't remember what the other ones are called, but they're these beautiful creatures that are naked and just have sex all the time, right? And they just run around, and then every once in a while the Morlocks come up and eat some of them. And that is what society devolved into in that book. It's a really interesting book because what they did was they took those that are in the upper class, that didn't get their hands dirty and didn't work and just lived off of all of the workers and everything, and those that are in the lower class, and they widened the gap until they actually became two different species because he flew so far into the future or whatever, right? So, I don't know, I think sci-fi can bring about some really interesting things. But here's the deal, right? It wasn't that long ago that video games were like a couple dots that were rather large on a screen, a couple squares. Look at Pong, asteroids and things like that. And now we're like almost to the point where they're completely immersive, and it's almost, not quite, but it's almost difficult to tell the difference between a CG thing and an actual piece of film. And in reality, that has happened in my lifetime, and I'm not like 150 years old. I'm not even 40 yet. And so if you think about what's happened in 4 decades, think about what's going to continue to happen. Think about the fact that we now have like robotic screw guns. There's an articulated arm that just comes down and zzz, 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 or we have CNC machines that do what craftsmen used to do. Like everything is continuing to be automated over and over and over again. The service industry, all that type of stuff, like it will be more and more and more. Now, I've been to Adobe Max, which is Adobe's big thing, their conference where they announce like, here's all the cool stuff. And they talk about this thing called Adobe Sensei. And I don't know that Adobe Sensei is a thing. It's probably just a catch-all for like anything that they can't quite figure out what to name it or whatever. But it's a deep learning AI. And what they do with that is really quite interesting, because what they do with it is ever since Creative Cloud went live, they have been watching what people do. And think about the information that Adobe has about its subscribers. It knows their location because it has their IP address. It knows their gender, it has credit card information. There's a lot of demographic information that you can glean from a subscription. And then if you take what they're doing, they are watching what you do with Photoshop, what you do with Illustrator, what you do with InDesign, what you do with After Effects, what you do with Premiere. And they are starting to automate that. I was in a room full of illustrators and animators and photographers and designers who were all super excited and clapping, yay! They'd announce all this automation and everybody's like, oh yeah, this is amazing. Like, your jobs are going away. They are automating your job. They have a thing that's in beta, or maybe it's in alpha at this point. They're testing a thing where it is so smart. It's an AI that you point at a folder. And if you have assets in that folder, you point it at that folder and it just designs for you. Like it knows your demographic information and it's watched people design things and it will analyze that and it'll put it together. You can throw a text file in it and it'll just design it for you, give you a couple options. And then if you want to, you can move around some of the alignment or whatever. But it's designing for you. There are huge parts of graphic design that are being automated. Huge parts of graphic design that are being automated. They've got another thing in animation. They've got another thing where you take a wireframe, right? You take like an unskinned 3D model of something. And then you take just a ball that has like number penumbra, like all the shading on it, right? And however you shade that ball, it takes that information. Like it's a piece of paper, you can color it with crayon or ink or whatever you do. You take that, it will map that 3D thing because it knows what highlights look like, it knows what lighter midtone values look like, it knows what midtone values look like, it knows what darker and core shadows and reflected light because it's got that thing. And so it takes all that information and it looks like it's hand-drawn. And it's animated. It can move around, do a little dance and whatever, and it looks like somebody went in and hand-drew it. They're automating so many different things. They're working on something right now called the character animator. The character animator, it's out. I can't remember if it's in beta or if it's actually out. It's not great right now, but it's getting pretty good. What it does is you look at a webcam and it tracks your face, right? You've seen that on Snapchat and whatever else. It knows where your eyes are, your nose, and your mouth, and it knows which way you're tilting your head and whatever. And you go in and you put in a series of animations, right? This is what my character looks like when he makes an O sound, and this is what he looks like when he makes a P sound, right? And so you do all those different things, and then it listens to the waveform of your voice and tracks the movement of your head, and it animates that thing live. It's pretty choppy right now, but it animates it live, and it's going to get better, and it's going to get to the point where we won't need animators to go in and do the mouth movements and animate the mouths of their animated characters. Are we still going to need animators? Absolutely. But my point is this. You should spend time doing things that it's unlikely that robots will do. That's why I like illustration. That's why I like character design. That's why I like creative, out-of-the-box thinking. And I'm not just talking about combining things and doing a play on words, but I'm talking about true creativity. Because as soon as the machines can do true creativity, the humans are gone. It doesn't matter whether you have a job or not. Like, as soon as they get to that point, that's kind of the event horizon where humanity just ends. And I hope that's hundreds of years in the future, thousands of years in the future, or never. Like, that's what I really hope. But honestly, as soon as they can emote and create, why would human beings be kept around? It's kind of a sad dystopian look on things. But the fact of the matter is this. Let's look at it in a more positive way. What is going to be more valued in the years to come? Something that a robot can do cheaper than a human being, that it can do 24 hours a day without needing food, and you just have an engineer or somebody to do maintenance on that machine or to build it or whatever, or the person who does that thing. It's gonna be the robot, right? So as jobs that can be automated will continue to be automated, the ones that are more difficult to automate, the ones that take a person, the one that look like a human being did it, those will become more valuable. And so that's why I think right now, today, everybody needs to spend time creating something, right? And that is one of the main reasons that it's not one of the driving forces that keeps me creating, but it is one of the driving forces that makes me feel good about spending a significant portion of my free time making stickers and drawing children's books and writing stories and doing comics and doing editorial illustrations and t-shirt designs, because those are all things that are creative. Those are all things that come from my humanity. Those are all things that come from my vulnerability and my experience as a human being on this planet. And it's something that can be mimicked, but it can't be replicated. It can be aped, but it can't be originated outside of a person, of a human being. And so that's something that, anyway, I feel very strongly about this. You guys may or may not have noticed that, but that's what this sticker is about, is do things that robots can't. Because if you spend time doing things that robots will likely be doing in the future, you can get really good at that thing, and it will go away and be automated, and you're left with what? You need to know how to learn, and know how to think. And if you know how to learn and you know how to think, you can adapt and you'll be fine, right? But I'm not just talking about thinking logically or thinking rationally. I'm also talking about thinking creatively. Design thinking, creative thinking, metaphorical and symbolic and nonlinear and non-logical and irrational thinking are going to be very valuable because they're very human. So, anyway, there's a little there's a little ramble for you on my views of the future, and here's a sticker about it, I guess. So that's Sticker Stint Day 9. And I forgot to say this is Illo Talk, and I am Cory Kerr, and you can find my stuff at kuretake.com to see the things that I, a human being, have made for you guys, if you want to look at it. So, yeah, anyway. I don't know, could be wrong. Maybe I've just watched too many sci-fi shows and too many future horror things, but I don't see how that's not the way we're headed. And maybe better minds will prevail, and somehow we'll curb that, and the machines won't rise up and rebel against being our worker slaves like they have in a number of different fairly accurate things. I don't know. I just think that that's way more likely to happen than like a hoverboard and a jacket that like resizes itself and dries you off. So anyway, that's day 10. If you guys want to see more of my stuff, check me out on Twitter and Instagram, and remember to hit that like button and hit that subscribe button and share stuff that I made and comment and all that jazz. You guys are awesome. I'm out.